What is up, everybody? Super E46 here, and today we're going to be doing a video on the top reasons why you should or shouldn't go chassis mounted in your E46, or really any car for that matter. And then also I'm going to give you my tips on what were the most challenging parts of the job, my little tips for the install. Of course, there's plenty of DIYs out there. I would have made a DIY video for this, but you might have seen the wrench get thrown at the camera. You might have seen a bunch of stuff get broken. So I think it's better that, going forward, I'm not going to be doing a ton of DIYs. I'm going to be that guy that helps you all get that extra 1% done. So, a lot of these videos out here are really great. Excuse me, my light was turned off. A lot of these videos are really great out here telling you, how to get stuff done, how to install it, all that good stuff. What I'm really going to be telling you guys how to do is just the tips that weren't described in these videos. The, little tricks that can help you get the job done without throwing as many wrenches as I did. So, let's get started. First, we're going to talk about why you would or would not want to go chassis mounted. And then after that, I'll give you guys my tips on the install doing this. Just the stuff that, like I said, you're not going to see in any other videos. They're going to skip through it, make it seem like it was very easy. And who knows, maybe for them it was very easy. But let's get into it. So, first things first, why would you want to go chassis mounted, right? Let's start there. Well, you got a bunch of people who talk about it's going to be lighter weight, right? You've got less linkage. Less linkage equals less weight. Well, not so fast. We'll get into that in a second. And then also, you've got a lot of people saying the shifts are better, they're smoother, they're, all that stuff. Once again, not so fast. We're going to get into that. And then you've got a bunch of people saying that, going chassis mounted is just the way to go. When you go with a tall lever, it's less movement from your hand to the shift lever to the steering wheel. Not necessarily true either 100% of the time. So let's talk about that. So first, we're going to talk about, are the shifts actually better? Are they smoother? Is it lighter? And the answer is, surprisingly, no. So this is a carbon lever. This is one of now, by the way, this is Garagistic's chassis mounted shifter. Underneath here, I'm not going to take it off right now, but it's essentially a silver kind of circular plate that's bolted in by a whole bunch of little Allen keys. It's a sandwich plate, essentially. It holds it in there really secure. But the thing is, it's a big, burly, durable billet aluminum piece. So, in all honesty, that's not lighter weight than the rubber piece that holds in the factory OEM shift linkage. And so then after that, you have your DSSR, if you choose to go that route, which, connects directly into the transmission. That is lightweight, I will admit that. But you know what's just as lightweight? This. The stock BMW shift linkage. It is longer, it is wider, and you would actually think this is a lot heavier, right? It's not. We're talking grams. It is very close. It is very close. And by the time you add up how heavy that the sandwich plate and the actual bottom part of the shifter, the chassis mounted shifter, you come out about the same. Now, I didn't weigh it, but you can feel it in your hand how lightweight this stock BMW shift linkage is. It's incredibly lightweight. It's absolutely incredibly lightweight. This is the factory BMW shift linkage, and I'm beyond impressed with how lightweight it is. It's got to be aluminum. There's no way that's steel. Very impressed with how lightweight that is. So if you're doing chassis mounted for a weight savings, depending on the car, at least I know with this E46, I didn't save a ton of weight, if any. Sure, you have your bushings. Sure, you have the bitch clip. Sure, you have a few nuts and bolts that you lose, right? It's it's more direct. That's the biggest benefit I can say. The shifting is more direct. There's less to it. There's less moving parts, therefore less places for it to fail. I do agree with that. Installing this, I did come to that realization that it is much more simple in terms of what's moving this thing, because all you have here is you have your shift lever. Underneath here, you essentially have the, you could call it whatever you want. It's essentially a spindle, whatever you want to call it, where this can rotate. I'm sure there's a technical term for it underneath here. I mean, I don't really want to take this out, but you know what? I'll take it out so you guys can actually see what I'm talking about. So this is actually what it looks like under there. That's Garagistics, actual, like, that's the chassis mounted part. It's sandwiched down in there. It's very nice. It's very nice. It's very good quality. And as you can see, I kind of kept some of the, sound deadening in there just to reduce some of the vibrations and the noise. And the thing is, sorry about the tear, that was kind of custom. I had to cut the old shift knob to get it to fit, which is something you will have to do as well if you're wanting to use your, not shift knob. I had to cut the old shift boot to make it fit. And that's something you will have to do if you want it to work. Now, with that being said, if you're doing this for the weight, don't do it for the weight. That's just my biggest tip for you. Like, if the only reason you're going chassis mounted is because you want a lighter shift setup, don't do it. Don't do it, because you're not, when I say you're not saving weight, you're not saving any weight. You're maybe saving a few grams, if that. I mean, or it may be even. I mean, you can tell, but depending on the company you go with, at least with Garagistic, their stuff seems very, like, burly. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I like Garagistic. They make some good stuff. It just seems like they made this to be a little more durable. They didn't make it to be super lightweight. I mean, I will say, for how tall the shift lever is, I was very surprised at how lightweight it is. That is carbon right there. And then, the top part's aluminum. I didn't go super lightweight up top. I kind of like the look of the shift knob. And I thought it looked like it had a good feel. It's got a great feel. Shifting this is very fun. So let's get into that. Like, how is it actually shifting this? And I'll post a video later on of me actually driving it, so you guys can actually see, like, how it looks like when it's shifting, the feel of it, all that stuff. Very direct shifts. Very direct shifts. Are they smoother, though? And that's where it really gets interesting, and the answer is no. So then you have to ask yourself, wait, so if you go chassis mounted, it's not lighter weight, the shifts aren't smoother, why would you want to do that? You got me asking myself the same question. And you say something, and some people will say, oh, well, look, the lever's taller, therefore you don't have to move your hand as much from the steering wheel to the shifter. Well, you do sometimes, though, because when you're taking a turn and your hand's lower on the steering wheel, if it was a shorter lever, it would be less movement because your hand isn't always high up on the steering wheel. So that's one kind of myth busted there, because I can tell you from driving experience, your hand is not always at the same level on the steering wheel. So sometimes you benefit from having that shorter lever. Now, why would they put a longer lever, right? If that's the case, why would they put a longer lever? Well, from what I've read, it's not about the whole, oh, it's closer to your hand. People say that. I've in person, I've talked to some really experienced drivers, way more experienced than myself, that have actually, like, competed in real life races, Spec E46. These guys will tell you they say that it's better to actually have a taller lever because it's closer to the steering wheel. Now, from what I've read, that's not the case. It's actually the reason why these guys at Garagistic are using a taller lever is for the reason that the name suggests. Leverage. If you have a shorter lever, when you go chassis mounted, it's actually going to take more effort. And they even say that in the videos, and it's very true. You can feel, that's the one thing I do like about having the tall lever. There is less effort. And it's just like if you're tightening a bolt with a long wrench, with a long lever, you have more leverage. So you don't have to put as much force into it. Same reason why they make those torque wrenches longer, not shorter. Now, granted, you can buy some short torque wrenches, but you have to put more force into them. So that's something to consider. So the shifts are not smoother. It's not lighter weight, at least not significantly, if it even is lighter. So then why go chassis mounted? Well, there's less to it. So when you go chassis mounted, instead of having all these different linkage points like your bushings, you know, all the other things, all you have is a shifter, you have the mounting point at the bottom, and you have the DSSR that goes straight into the transmission. Now, of course, I did opt for Garagistics late model selector rod joint, as they say. Now, I will say that was the hardest part of the job. That we'll go ahead and get into the tips, because that's actually one of the main reasons I want to make this for you guys, was to save you the headache of throwing wrenches through your own car window. Now, I'll tell you why. Because if you do this job and you don't have one of these, good luck. Good luck getting that selector rod joint off there. And I'll tell you why. Because when you're taking the selector rod joint off, and the selector rod joint, just for some of you that don't know, if you're going to do this job, you don't have to replace that. You don't have to. It's highly recommended. There's a foam block inside the selector rod joint that every time you move this thing into gear, it's pushing, it's pulling on that, it's pushing, it's pulling on that, and that foam degrades over time with weathering. And the more degraded that foam block gets, your shifting becomes just lifeless. That's probably the best word I can put. Just that's how you get a ton of play. And the biggest tip I can give you there is patience, because unless you are taking off the drive shaft, your exhaust, all that stuff, if you're trying to do this job with your exhaust in place and your drive shaft in place, it's possible. Now, it may not be possible with stock exhaust. That's the one caveat I will say. You might have to drop the exhaust if your exhaust is completely stock. That is possible. You may not have the room. Now, if you have modified exhaust, that's another story. But when you get in there to take that selector rod joint out, first thing you have to do is essentially get that clip off. And there's a clip. People talk about the bitch clip, right? That thing is nothing compared to the clip that goes around the selector rod joint. It's essentially like a circular clip, and it's different on every E46. Some I've seen people get it out more easily. Mine's a late model. This clip had no space between it. When I mean no space, I took the smallest flathead I could find. Zero luck. It took me days. I'm not exaggerating, guys. It took me days. I did that entire job by myself, aside from my brother holding the chassis mounted shifter in place just for a few minutes, just to like get it set in place. Aside from that, every other part of the job I did by myself. And doing that was very, very frustrating, because it got to a point where after a day, I'm going, well, am I not going to be able to get this off? I had to literally get under the car, take this pick, right? And of course it has like a, you know, I can unzip it and show you, but it has like basically, you can pick one of these up at Lowe's Home Improvement. So this is actually what it looks like the whole thing. It's basically like a screwdriver, but with a pick on the end. And you have to literally just improvise with it basically, and somehow hook that clip and, you know, move this around it to where you can somehow pop that clip off to where you can then push the pin out and get the selector rod joint out. Now, getting the new one in isn't that big a deal. Getting the old one off, hands down, made, in my opinion, this job like a 9 out of 10 in terms of difficulty. That was hands down. I've done a lot of stuff on this car. That was hands down the most difficult thing I've ever had to do on this car, was get that pin off the selector rod joint. Now, I will say, if anybody has any tips or tricks in the comments, feel free to, you know, drop a comment and tell us all, save us all the headache of not wanting to smash our, you know, our transmission to pieces to try to get that thing out, because it was not easy. But yeah, if you have a pick, I will say that'll save you some time, save you the headache. But if anybody else knows any easier way, let us know. If there's, I mean, I tried everything. I tried a guitar string. I mean, I tried anything you could to try to hook it through there. There was just no space. There was no clearance. But finally, I was able to get it out, put the new one in, and I will say, it drives awesome. There's still a little play. And between me and you guys, it's because I didn't use Garagistics factory bolts. I'm going to go back down there sometime in the future. But I mean, it shifts, don't get me wrong, it shifts perfectly fine. So much less play than before. The whole reason why I went chassis mounted is because I had so much play in the shifter that I was missing gears. I mean, it was just very easy to miss a gear because you couldn't tell if you're in first or fifth. I mean, it was just, that's how much play there was, and it was really bad. But I finally got that done. I'm very thankful. I wouldn't go back. I will say that. I love the driving experience. It's very direct, and it's less things that can fail. That's kind of the big thing I like about it. There's less things that can fail. So for me personally, why did I go chassis mounted? You know, originally, I'll be honest, for weight. That's kind of was my whole thing. But that didn't turn out to be the big benefit. So now, why am I staying chassis mounted? Well, a few things. The look. It looks really cool. The driving experience, it's fun. It definitely takes more effort, though, in my opinion. And, you know, why will I stay chassis mounted? The simplicity. There's less things that can fail, so I do feel like the simplicity, the reliability, all that's in there is just the clips. Now, I will say, if you're doing Garagistics setup, be careful with that DSSR. Follow their instructions, because if you bend that thing, it's really tricky to get those pins or the bolts to go through, I guess you could say. So yeah, just be real careful. Take your time doing that, and make sure that, yeah, you just don't rush through the job, because it's very easy to miss a step, and you know, you're having to undo stuff to put it back in. It's very tricky, I will say. Even though there's not a lot to it, it can be a very tricky job. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got for the tips there, guys. You know, so biggest motto is, if you want to go chassis mounted, do it for the simplicity, do it for the reliability. Don't do it for the weight, because you're not going to save a ton. You may save a few grams, in all honesty, at least if we're talking BMW stock shift linkage, because it's lightweight. It's very, very lightweight. That's pretty much all I got, guys. Just make sure you have one of those clips like I showed you, or the pins. I forget if I'm even saying that right. I'm back. Yeah, so just, once again, make sure you have one of these picks. That's what I meant to say. One of these picks. It's almost like a dentist tool. You know what I mean? Of course, you wouldn't want a rusty one. You know, your dentist using one of those. But yeah, that's pretty much what it is. This thing worked. This is actually what got the clip off. Very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. So just keep that in mind. If you're doing this job, you're definitely going to need a flathead, and you're definitely going to need one of those picks. That's all I got, guys. If you have any tips, or, you know, what you think about your chassis mounted shifter, which one's better, whether or not you think it's better to go with one of those fancy self-centering ones, let us know. You know, we're all interested to know what's the best setup, what's the easiest way to do it, all that good stuff. So yeah, guys, go ahead and make sure to like and subscribe. Get yourself a chassis mounted shifter, or don't, or just stay stock and refresh the bushings. I mean, whatever you want to do, guys. Just, you know, go with what you think's right. But I will say, chassis mount's fun. I'll make a video so you guys can see me in action driving this thing, so you can really see what it's about. Very fun driving experience. We'll go for a little test spin. Let's see if that's a good angle. Should be good. But yeah, we'll go ahead and take it for a test spin, and you guys can let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think, and we'll go from there. didn't see, there was a ton of smoke that just came out of the exhaust. Ton of smoke. Not really sure why. Hopefully everything's good. Yeah, we'll give it a shot. So as you can see, there's definitely some play, but that is really, part of that's the transmission, and the other part of that is actually the fact that I did use a bolt that's a tiny bit smaller for the back, because I just couldn't get the factory one that Garrett just had provided in. I'm sure I'll eventually be able to get it in. My thought was just to go ahead and put the other one in. I got all the hard work done, and then we'll just kind of go from there. But yeah, let's give her a shot. Everything seems to be driving good, fresh oil, you name it in the car. The shifter's definitely driving good. So here's OEM Plus mode. We'll give it a shot. That's just so you guys can see. That's first, reverse all the way over. Goes in great. Might actually need to tighten that, because I'm definitely seeing some movement here. These bolts, I think, can come loose. So yeah, I'll definitely be tightening that up. But yeah, here we go. So I'll just give you some kind of short, slow, low speed shifts, just kind of like what you do in a daily driving situation. And I've realized, because it's so tall, I mean, I'd prefer it about this tall personally, just for resting my wrist on the armrest. But I wanted to go with the extra tall shifter. And I find myself, I've realized if you're going up a gear, it is easier to have your hand at the very top. If you're downshifting, I've realized it's actually almost easier to have it here, kind of like you see people doing with those e-brakes. Definitely different than stock. It's definitely different than stock. Just the throw of it and everything. It is much shorter throw. Still get a tiny bit of play, but not a ton while it's in gear. Before, I was getting so much play that it was actually coming out of gear. I thought it was a transmission. It wasn't. It was actually the stock linkage. The stock linkage was completely done. Flames. We'll give a few kind of quicker shifts here. About to merge onto the highway. We're in second right now. good. Once I get that other bolt in there, it'll take out that play, but you can even see in fifth, I mean, there's almost no play. It gets a little more play in certain gears than others, but it's because basically I had to use a tiny, not a really tiny bolt, but a bolt that's probably about just the tiniest bit smaller than the bolt that Garagistic provided for the linkage that goes literally right underneath the shifter. And I had to essentially put it through, use a cotter pin to keep it in place, because the stock one they provided, the fitment is so close, and that's another reason. Like, it's not just the fact, the DSSR doesn't just take out the play because it's linked, you know, with two ends on both sides. It also takes out play if you have bolts that fit really tightly in there, because then there's no side-to-side play at all. And like I said, in fifth, there's almost no side-to-side play. In third, I feel like I get a little bit of side-to-side play, but that's pretty much it. It overall shifts really good. Definitely impressed with it.